So it's been a while. I've been just busy playing ZZZ. But setting that aside, the Cipher banner has started, and that means we are getting more and more closer to patch 3.4, probably the biggest patch of HSR up till now. Given the amount of all the new characters, and especially all the old characters that are getting buffed. And that's what I want to discuss today. How much these buffs change their builds, playstyles, even teams. This one is going to be focusing on Silverwolf, who I think will have the biggest impact among the buffed units. I will also discuss some questions that players have been asking me in the comments of my other videos, and there are timestamps for those sections. Anyways, leave a like if you find this video helpful, and let's get started. Let's talk about lootbar.gg, the best top-up platform for your favorite games like Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, and now Zenless Zone Zero. It provides some crazy discounts on every item there is, and it's super easy to use. Just go to lootbar.gg, select Honkai Star Rail, or whatever game you play. Select your preferred pack, and then type your UID, select your server, and click on top up now. With just a few clicks, you can get your hands on some awesome deals. Lootbar also has tons of positive reviews, and all the purchase is done through official Hoyoverse routing channels, making it a super safe option. And this also applies to PlayStation and Xbox users, if you can place orders through Lootbar. Not only that, some of your favorite content creators, including me, uses Lootbar for every in-game purchase. So just click on the link in the description or in the pinned comment and check out lootbar.gg right now. So, for anyone who have been playing HSR for more than a year, you probably already know why the base kit of Silverwolf is so bad. To summarize, aside from being purely single target, she has really low base chance for her debuffs, which requires her to be built with a lot more effect hit rate. She also has a lot of randomness to her weakness implant, and obviously, being both single target and stat hungry results in very low personal damage output. Now there are also other issues like her energy problems, where she struggles to get her ultimate on her first turn if you don't have the tutorial mission stars Lycon. And even with that, you sometimes have to fish for extra enemy hits. This is also a big issue in a normal rotation. You kinda need to spam her skill or go with your normal skill basic skill combo to get even a 3-turn ultimate. Now granted, she was released in 1.1, and for that time, she was pretty strong, but nobody knew back then how the meta would shift. And obviously, no one ever thought that HSR will face this level of power creep even before Genshin, which came out 3 years before Star Rail. But that's a topic for another time. The good thing is that the buffs completely fixes all her previous issues, and more. At this point, she has the potential to be at least tier 0.5 with units like Jiaoqiu and Ruan Mei. To give a simple rundown of her changes, first they increased all her debuffs and effects base chance to 120%, which significantly lowers her effect hit rate requirements. They fixed her skill's weakness implant randomness, as now she always implants the weakness of the first ally in the team. As such, you can have better control over the weakness implant. The talent is mostly the same. The ultimate, however, has become one of the most stupid things in her kit. Her ultimate is now an AoE attack, which can decrease defense and deal damage to all enemies, which is good. At this stage of the game, you need AoE debuffs, but now, the more we talk about this attack, the more broken it will become. First is the passive. The first one simply applies more debuffs when the enemy's weakness is broken. The second one, however, gives her 20 energy at the start of the battle, guaranteeing her a first turn ultimate at the start. And then it gives 5 energy at the start of her each turn. Now her ultimate cost is only 110, and with the tutorial mission start Lycon, you get 8 energy every time she attacks. With all this, and an ERR rope, you are getting this ultimate every 2 turns guaranteed. And if you look at the multipliers for this ultimate, is 380% to all enemies, which is kinda stupid considering the multipliers of other AoE ultimates, except for the Herta because well, she's just too broken. Anaxa has 160%, Argenti has 280% with some extra hits for the 180 cost ultimate, Jade has 240%. So basically, Silverwolf is now a Nihility unit and an Erudition unit combined. For the last passive, it increases her attack based on her effect hit rate, and you need 50% EHR to get the max 50% attack increase. Now since her base chance has been increased to 120% for all of her debuffs, you need mostly 30 to 40% EHR at max. And if you use the tutorial mission start Lycon, that's 40% right there. And with the 80% from her bonus stats, you are already at 58% without a single EHR stat from the relics, meaning you can build her as a main DPS instead, and that means more damage from her crazy ultimate. And now this gets even more stupid with her Eidolons. Her E1 grants her 7 energy for every debuff present on the enemy when she uses her ultimate, and this can be stacked up to 5 times for 5 debuffs, and that will grant her at max 35 energy. So like, now with this, she gets her ultimate every other turn, which is crazy. I don't know how the devs think this is balanced, but hey, I'm all for it. Given the level of broken kits HSR has, like this one guy called Finon, I'm totally on board for an old character getting buffed. Her E2 is basically saying, it's time for you to get benched, Jiaoqiu. When enemy targets enter battle, they take 20% more damage. Nice. And also, when any ally attack a target, Silverwolf will inflict debuffs onto that target. So this makes pretty much any character on the team to be able to inflict debuffs. Your Akron can inflict debuffs, your Hyacinth can inflict debuffs even without a signature Lycone, your Trippy can inflict debuffs with her AoE follow-up attack. This is basically a Jiaoqiu power creep. For E4 and E6, they're basically the same, nothing really changed here. Overall, at E0, she is definitely on the level of Jiaoqiu and even Cipher in terms of value, but with her E1 and E2, she is definitely above Jiaoqiu in my opinion. And I'm considering Eidolons, as she being a 1.1 character, it won't be long before she is added to the standard banner and to the shop, so players will be able to get her Eidolons more easily. But now, let's look at her builds. By the way, if you are enjoying the content, please consider subscribing, as it does help the channel grow and motivates me to make more content for you guys. Now for her builds, first let's start with the issues in the previous builds. Here, given her low base chance, you kinda needed a lot of EHR, like around 96 to 100% to be safe, and that required you to have an EHR main stat piece. Of course, there were players who could get that much even without an EHR main stat piece, but for general players, this was the usual build, and given her single target nature, there was not that much value in building damage on her. But now with her high base chance, you basically need 0 EHR stats from her relics. Her Lycone and bonus stats provides more than enough. As such, you can build her full damage, especially because of her crazy ultimate. Go with the crit rate or crit damage body, the boosts are always speed, attack or damage on the sphere, and an ERR rope. For Lycones, there is nothing better than the tutorial mission start Lycone. It's even better than a signature, and it's completely free, so just use that, and don't even think about using anything else. For relic sets, the Pioneer set combined with the Lushaka set is the best option to go for in my opinion. It helps with both crit stat and ERR, but if you have really good genius pieces, you can also use that. For Planars, you can also go with the Penacony set, if your team is quantum based, and that's basically how you build her. You just don't care about EHR and simply build speed and crit. She does get more attack from her passive, so always use an ERR rope, and you're good to go. Now for the main topic, let's go through her synergies. And for the first question, is she better than Jiaoqiu in an Akron team? Now for an E0 Akron, you do need 2 Nihility units, and my best recommendation is to use them both together. But if you have Cipher as your first Nihility unit and just need 1 more Nihility unit, for that, I'd say it depends. Like, one thing that a lot of players don't think about Jiaoqiu is that the biggest value that he provides for Akron is not damage taken debuffs. The actual percentage of damage taken he provides is not that high. The actual biggest value he provides is stat generation for Akron's ultimate, and this is much better than most other debuffers, because the Ashen Rose debuff can be inflicted out of turns as well. Like when the enemy takes turn or enter combat, this Ashen Rose debuff gets applied to them. As such, with more enemy turns, Jiaoqiu is able to generate more stacks, but this can also be situational. Like recently, we have gotten enemies that does not take that many turns, or are boss enemies with no extra mobs. A good example can be Nikito. Against this guy, Jiaoqiu struggles to perform well, or I guess he is not as good as he can be. And for these situations, a high-speed Silverwolf can be a better unit for Akron. She has a skill and a really fast ultimate. With all that, her debuff application can easily compete with Jiaoqiu, but more so, her damage amplification with her defense down and her personal damage output makes her much better than Jiaoqiu in certain situations. Now if you have an E1 Silverwolf, then most of the time she is much better than Jiaoqiu, and especially if you have E2 Akron. For that, an E1 Silverwolf is much better than Jiaoqiu, and if you were to add more, like if you have E2 Silverwolf, then there is no comparison. Her providing 20% damage taken and making every unit on the team to be able to apply debuffs is simply better than Jiaoqiu. Even if you compare an E2 Jiaoqiu, an E2 Silverwolf will be better. At that point, it's more of a comparison between Cipher and Silverwolf. And that's the next question. Is she better than Cipher? Now I have uploaded a full Cipher guide, in which I've talked about how she works, her pros and cons, so you can go check that video out if you want to know more about her kit. But for TLDR, at E0, Cipher's personal damage is pretty low, and in terms of debuff application, Silverwolf is better. Cipher's actual major functions are the 40% damage taken with the extra defense down from her Lycones and her massive damage ultimate. Now aside from the ultimate, both Silverwolf and Cipher seems pretty close. Cipher has her damage taken and defense down, but Silverwolf also has a big 45% defense down with extra resistance down with her skill, not to mention the weakness implant. So in these aspects, she and Cipher are pretty close. One other major factor is their versatility. Cipher with her universal kit, her damage taken, and her follow-up attacks, she can be used in a variety of teams. This is one factor where Jiaoqiu falls behind. Sure, he also provides damage taken, but he focuses a bit more on ultimate damage. It's not as universal as Cipher. Now on the other hand, all the utility that Silverwolf provides can also be used in any team. So in the end, it all depends on their damage output. Now it's still early to say how much damage will Silverwolf do with her ultimate. Well, there are actual gameplay footage online of her doing over 1 million damage, and she is doing so every other turn. And if I were to judge based on that, her damage will be higher than Cipher's true damage. But those clears are with a fully focused hyper carry build and supports like Sunday and with Eidolons as well. And also, Cipher's damage is mostly based on the team, so it's not a fair comparison. If I were to simply give my opinion, I'd say at E0, Silverwolf is pretty close to Cipher, or even just as good based on teams. It is still early to say if she's better than Cipher in all aspects, but one thing I can say for sure is that if you already have Silverwolf, in terms of value for your account, pulling for Cipher is not recommended. And if Hoyo does add Silverwolf in the shop and the standard banner, and we consider an E2 Silverwolf, then I definitely don't recommend Cipher, but only if you already have Silverwolf in your account. Lastly, one other unit that Silverwolf can replace will be RMC in any of his teams. This was an idea that a lot of players have been talking about on the internet, and I think it's not as close of a comparison. First of all, there is no better utility in this game than 100% action advance, in my opinion. In a turn-based combat-focused game, providing more turns is the best thing you can do as a support. On top of that, he provides true damage, and for that, RMC is still better for those teams, but he can also be hard to play for some players. His action advance is not as simple as like Sunday or Bronya. It's like a charge mechanic, where you want to trigger that action advance in the right time, and that can be a bit tricky. Like, let's take a normal Castris team. You always want to carefully place the mem support buff on Castris so that she and her Memo Sprite take the full advantage of the true damage buff. Now good thing is that the buff also gets applied to the Memo Sprite, which makes it much simpler, but the action advance is still very technical. Now if you don't want to be that technical, you can just use it when you have it. But for optimal rotations, you would want to pay a bit more attention. This becomes even more relevant when you have other action advance sources like Dance 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 or Sunday, or even your DPS having action advance. Like for my account, I have an E2 Castris, and with her E2's 100% action advance, with Triby's Dance 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 and RMC, this whole team can become quite technical, which I personally enjoy, but for most new or casual players, a unit like Silverwolf with a defense down, weakness implant, and high damage output can be a better option. It's basically like a high skill high reward situation. In terms of execution, Silverwolf is much easier to execute than RMC. So even though RMC is still better for Castris teams or any other teams he is in, if you don't care about min-maxing, or if you're already using RMC on another team, Silverwolf can be an excellent replacement. Overall, Silverwolf definitely got the best rework, buff, changes, or whatever you want to call it. And I'm just happy that I can finally use her on my teams. I still won't recommend pulling for her if you don't have her, not because she is not good. I simply recommend pulling newer units, as they will have a much longer lifespan than a 1.1 unit. And there's also the fact that Hoyo may add her to the standard banner soon enough. But if you already have her, congratulations. In my opinion, the buffed Silverwolf is a tier 0.5 unit. As such, she's back in the meta, boys. She's once again a meta character in Honkai Star Rail's endgame. And that's all for this deep dive discussion. If you have any other questions regarding Silverwolf, you can leave them in the comments or simply hop into one of my streams, and I'll try my best to answer them. Like and sub if you enjoy my content. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.